your time today and for joining us. The Statewide Codes and Standards program is honored to be able to do this research and bring this to the whole state, and we hope that you find it beneficial. And the REACH Codes program is supported by PG&E, Southern California Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric. We collaboratively do this because we know that together we are stronger in terms of our ability to bring neutral, cost-effective analysis to the whole state across 16 climate zones. So thank you for your trust and for joining today. Let's go over the agenda briefly. So I'm already doing my greeting and introduction. And again, I'm Kelly Cunningham from our Codes and Standards team here at PG&E. I'm just going to say a few brief things about the history of this project and also the background on what brings us to this topic here today. And then I'm going to pass it over to Maggie Deng from the California Energy Commission for her position and perspective on the policy and why it's important to consider this at this time. Then we're going to pass it over to Ada Chen from the Frontier Energy team to walk us through the AC to heat pump study methodology that we used for this study, and then to walk through the results and interpretations of where we're at today. And we have not published the final cost effectiveness study. And part of what we want to hear from you today is what you think and some input. And we'll be wrapping it up and getting it out to the world very soon. Then we're going to do some question and answers, and seeing some great names and great minds in this group, I know you're going to bring some great questions at the end. So thank you very much. So let's just start off with a little bit on cost effectiveness studies. So in this AC to heat pump measure package we're presenting today, we are doing this cost effectiveness study because we hope that it will bring you information that will inform jurisdictions as they work on their ordinance development, or entities that support jurisdictions and bring forward maybe slight alterations that are right for a particular region. Our CCA and regional energy network partners, for example, may see things at the local level where they may want to bring to their cities and counties some nuances on a particular ordinance. We want to understand the impacts. We want to be able to say, this is what we think will happen based on our assumptions, and we have to come to common ground on what those assumptions will be for a report, and look at what the bill impacts will be. What will the GHG implications be? What are some different ways to look at the cost for the project? And then we also want to make sure that whatever we put together does help jurisdictions when they ultimately would need to pass this through their local approval process. And in this case, because it is a reach over an energy, over the energy code, we also would need to document compliance with CEC requirements. And this includes, just a quick plug, making sure your documents are ADA compliant. It's a super important part that happens at the end. So localenergycodes.com will have lots of resources for you in terms of this type of ordinance and the other type of ordinances that we support. And we do cost effectiveness studies, a critical step for many different types of ordinances. You can take a look at what some of those typical requirements are. So I want to leave this chart up here on the screen for you to scan real quick. These are the general requirements for the amendments to the building standards, with a special call out on the right column for those that reach over Part 6, our energy code, which we all know and love. Down there in the lower right, just need to offer the disclaimer that we always recommend that you involve, if you're a jurisdiction or an entity that supports them, your county, city, entity, attorneys, or counsel, and that the information that we offering cannot be construed as legal advice. And the Energy Commission also their approval does not guarantee preemption protection. So involve your experts on that one. And while we have this slide up on the screen, I'll tell you a little bit of the background about how we've arrived here today. So in the 2025 Energy Code process, we saw an emerging air conditioning to heat pump proposal that was brought forth and considered as part of the 2025 Energy Code process. So the utilities are a stakeholder in that process, so we are watching this closely. And then during the code update rulemaking process, it was moved over to Part 11, known as CalGreen, and was debuted in approximately August of last year as a CalGreen amendment instead of going in the base code. At this time, we took a close look, the local energy codes team took a close look at the language, and we formed a working group of experts and persons who might have to take something like this and put it into actual practice. And that working group identified some opportunities for improvement that may make this measure package easier to enforce, clearer to enforce, and also easier to analyze in terms of the cost impacts on bills and in general, the impacts for compliance. So over the past months since then, since August, September of last year, we've been wrestling with ordinance language and the cost effectiveness study inputs, and it has led us here today. Quick note, we're going to go ahead and put in the chat. We did release ordinance language, a suggestion, which is an alteration from what was there in the CalGreen language in April after feedback from stakeholders and others. Thank you so much for improving on the language. So take a look when that lands in the chat if you haven't already. And if you are one of the stakeholders who reviewed and gave us feedback, we deeply appreciate your time and expertise. So now I'm going to hand the mic and the camera over to Maggie from the California Energy Commission. She is an advisor to Commissioner McAllister, and she's going to talk a little bit about what this policy means to the Commission and give us some really important statewide framework that you should consider as you listen today. Maggie, thank you so much for being here and for lending your voice and the Commission's voice to this event.
Of course. Thank you so much, Kelly. Good afternoon, everyone. As she said, I'm Maggie Den, one of multiple advisors to Commissioner Andrew McAllister. For those of you who don't know, Commissioner McAllister is our lead commissioner for CEC on building decarbonization, energy efficiency more broadly, load flexibility, and a variety of other topics. And first, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to the statewide Reach Codes team for giving me some time on their agenda today. So as Kelly mentioned, given CEC's role in developing and adopting the 2025 CalGreen, broader statewide energy code, I am here really to provide a brief high level, 30,000 feet level statewide context for why AC to heat pump is so critical for reaching California's ambitious climate goals. Next slide, please. So I won't read everything on the slide here, but given how many state agencies we have in California, I thought it might be helpful just to clarify where CEC fits in. So CEC is the state's primary energy policy and planning agency, which is shorthand for saying we have a lot on our plate, as you can see on the slide here. But part of our energy efficiency work is developing and adopting the energy code, which includes, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, the mandatory statewide Part 6, and also the voluntary Reach Code in Part 11 or CalGreen. Next slide, please. So I just thought I'd start off with answering why energy efficiency, right? And I think a lot of you are probably familiar with this graph, but it's a favorite of mine. It's the Rosenfeld curve, named after Art Rosenfeld, also known as the father of energy efficiency, which shows how California's per capita electricity has flattened significantly in the last few decades compared to the US as a whole. And I should caveat that roughly 2/3 of this difference between the green California section and the blue larger US section is due to a lot of heavy industry leaving our state, but about a third of the difference can be attributed to energy efficiency standards for buildings and appliances. So yeah, just wanted to highlight that as we go through our current clean energy transition, it's important to keep in mind that energy efficiency is a key tool for managing the new loads that come with the transition. Next slide, please. And why buildings in particular, right? So just quickly here on the left-hand side, you can see that residential building stock accounts for 8% of our statewide greenhouse gas emissions. And then zeroing in on fossil gas demand here on the right, you can see that residential buildings also are a huge slice of the pie chart on the right, roughly a fifth of the statewide fossil gas demand. And I also just wanted to note for context that California is actually one of the states with the highest percentage of households using natural gas for residential households relative to other states. And zooming in on a single household level, what are the primary end uses using natural gas? That would be space and water heating. Next slide, please. And then narrowing my simplistic why questions here, why existing buildings? So I thought it'd be helpful to share with everybody some data here from the 2023 American Community Survey, which shows the age of California's housing stock. I think in the news or the media, a lot of the attention on building standards goes to new construction. But as this chart shows here, actually new construction is quite a small piece of the entire statewide building stock, right? You can see that actually a majority, I think something like 60% or more of our state's building stock was built pre-1980s. And the Energy Commission started setting its building standards in, I believe, 1978. So this just, to me, highlights the big opportunity that existing buildings represent for our decarbonization goals as a state. Next slide, please. And this is the last slide I have for you here, but just wanted to highlight from a statewide perspective why heat pumps are a key decarbonization strategy. I'm sure many of you know, but just highlighting for you again that Governor Gavin Newsom signed an executive order setting our statewide heat pump goal at 6 million installed by 2030. And as for why heat pumps, well, the current models of typical household heat pumps are about 3 to 5 times more energy efficient than gas boilers. And as Ada's presentation will show you, there are also opportunities for, bill savings depending on climate and local context. And of course, also fuel switching over to electricity reduces building emissions. And finally, just wanted to highlight that, heat pumps having the dual function of cooling and heating also provides convenience for our residents. And that's it for me. I don't think I have another slide, so I'll just say again, thank you so much to the Reach Codes team for giving me this time. They've been great partners to the CEC, and I've definitely enjoyed getting to work with them on a more regular basis. And thank you to everyone listening. I did see some familiar names on the attending list, so glad to see those who have had the fortune to meet already, and looking forward to meeting more of you hopefully soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. I'll be taking it from here. I'm Ada Shen with Frontier Energy, and I'll be sharing the results from our ACU to heat pump study with you all. First, I wanted to just talk about some background and scope of the study. Some of you may be familiar, we released a broader single-family retrofit report about a year ago, which included things like envelope measures. But this study focuses on heat pump space conditioning measures, and it provides some updates given feedback we've received and some more current information. Some of those updates include updated utility rates to January of 2025, equipment costs based on tech data where they're available, where the previous single-family retrofit report was based on statewide contractor survey costs. We also have AC path requirements and cost estimates So many jurisdictions are interested in seeing alternative pathways for an air conditioner. So these alternative pathways include an air conditioner equipment combined with additional efficiency measures, resulting in options that are reasonably energy or LSC cost equivalent to the extent that's feasible. We also have a zero NOx scenario. So this is cost effectiveness results for this scenario if gas furnaces are effectively banned in 2030. So the Bay Area Air Quality Management District has adopted a zero NOx rule, and both CARB and South Coast Air Quality Management District have proposed rules that have not yet been adopted. But given these implications that these rulings would have on a 30-year cost effectiveness analysis, if gas furnaces are no longer available in 2030, we included a sensitivity analysis for this scenario that we'll unpack more in this presentation. So to determine cost effectiveness, we modeled a 1665 square foot existing prototype with the following characteristics, and we assumed individual space conditioning and water heating systems, one per single family building, split system air conditioners with natural gas furnace, small storage natural gas water heaters, and gas cooktop oven, clothes dryer, and 3 vintages, pre-1978, 1978 to 1991, and 1992 to 2010. And the building characteristics for each vintage were determined based on either building efficiency requirements in effect or standard construction practices during that time period. There are 2 methodologies we use to evaluate cost effectiveness in our reports. First one is on-bill cost effectiveness, and it's based on utility data, and it's essentially cost effectiveness from the customer's point of view. The utility rate applied is based on the predominant utility serving each zone, with some zones evaluated with multiple utilities where service territories cross over. And cost effectiveness is over 30 years, so we use some escalation assumptions that we'll talk about in the next slide. Second methodology is LSC, and this is, you can think of it as the long-term cost of operating California's energy system. So where on-bill is intended to reflect the perspective from the customer's point of view, LSC reflects the impact of investment across the entire energy system in California. Both of these are 30-year analysis periods, and will present results in net present value, which is the present value of the benefit minus the present value of the cost. So as I mentioned, for the on-bill analysis, we apply some escalation rates. So in this graph, to orient us a little bit, on the x-axis is the year, and the y-axis is the escalation rate. So the percent increase of the utility rate that year. The lines with the triangles on them are the gas escalation rates. And the main point of this graph is to show how the gas escalation rates diverge between 2 different assumptions. So we have in the purple, the 2025 LSC gas escalation rate. And in this presentation, we'll refer to it as the high gas escalation rate. And in the blue, we have the CPUC and 2022 TDV gas escalation, which we'll refer to as the modest gas escalation rate. So you'll notice how there's a divergence here, and the high gas escalation rate has a pretty aggressive assumption about the future of fuel choice moving towards all electric, and therefore a steep increase in the gas prices. So these 2 escalation assumptions provide a sort of range where the reality will probably fall between the 2. It's hard to predict the future, so we just wanted to provide you with all the information yeah, so that you can see just where the results may land. So we'll see how that plays out in the results. We evaluated 3 measures for this analysis. The first one is a dual fuel heat pump with where the existing furnace has still some life, so it's left there, and it serves as backup heating when temperatures fall below 35 Fahrenheit. We have a minimum federal efficiency heat pump space heater, and then a high efficiency heat pump space heater. Now we'll move into some of the study results and implications. So the goal of this presentation is to give you a high-level sense of the results. I did put some tables at the end of the presentation that I believe will be sent to you all. So if you're interested in seeing where the results land in your area, you can. But I'm just going to highlight a few climate zones and some measures to paint some broad strokes. First one is on-bill cost effectiveness. So this is based on utility bills. It's the customer's point of view. So as we mentioned previously, we evaluated the entire suite of measures with both the modest and the high gas escalation assumptions. In this graph, this is Climate Zone 7 in the newest vintage, where blue is the modest gas escalation and orange is the high gas escalation. So as you'll notice, there is a substantial difference in the cost effectiveness results between the two escalation assumptions, and the cost effectiveness result does flip in the case of the heat pump space heater measure in Climate Zone 7. And this is due to the high gas escalation rate relative to low electricity escalation rate. Also wanted to show a few other climate zones to give an idea of how the results land. So in the middle is Climate Zone 9, and on the right is Climate Zone 12. So you'll notice that in the milder climate zones with low heating loads, there's less opportunity for savings. So we see less cost effectiveness in Climate Zone 7 and 9, which are in Southern California, than in Climate Zone 12 in Sacramento with higher heating loads. Cost effectiveness also depends on electricity rates relative to gas rates. So that's another factor that plays into these cost effectiveness results that you see on the screen here. The other metric is LSC cost effectiveness. So again, this is the cost across the cost on California's energy system. So LSC metric tends to produce more favorable cost effectiveness results relative to on bill, the one based on utility costs. So just wanted to share this as well. So this is the oldest vintage for all climate zones and all three measures. The blue is a dual fuel heat pump, orange is the heat pump space heater, and the gray is the high efficiency heat pump space heater. And as you'll notice, all of these measures across all climate zones are LSC cost effective in the oldest home. And in the newer homes, they're cost effective in most cases as well. In addition, an important metric to consider is the first year utility savings. So if this value is negative, it means that the resident is going to pay more in this coming year after implementing the measure. So after they install a heat pump space heater, they're actually going to pay more. So in this graph, this is Climate Zone 12 in the newest vintage, where blue is PG&E and orange is SMUD utility rates. So both PG&E and SMUD territory use PG&E gas rates, but SMUD has lower electricity rates than PG&E. So you'll notice that especially with fuel switching measures, the electricity to gas ratio has a significant impact on the savings or cost that the customer will see by switching from gas to heat pump space heater. So next I want to talk us through the zero NOx scenario. So we ran a sensitivity under the scenario that the proposed or adopted air quality district zero NOx rulings go into effect and gas furnaces are no longer available to be installed in 2030. So some background is that CARB, the California Air Resources Board, and South Coast Air Quality Management District have proposed but not yet adopted zero NOx standards for space conditioning systems. This would effectively prevent people from installing gas furnaces in their homes after 2030. And the Bay Area Air Quality Management District has an adopted zero NOx standard for space conditioning systems that I believe goes into effect in 2029. Because of this, we want to run a sensitivity analysis to see how this will impact the 30-year cost effectiveness and compare that with our current results. So I wanted to talk through some of the assumptions first before I show you the results. So for the zero NOx scenario, for the base case, we assume that at year 0, when the air conditioner dies and needs to be replaced, it'll be replaced with another air conditioner. But the furnace still has 10 more years of life. So then in 10 years, when the furnace dies, this is year 2036, and gas furnaces are no longer able to be installed. So now this person is forced to install a heat pump, even though their air conditioner still has life. So they install a heat pump, and that's essentially the base case scenario. In the upgrade scenario, so in this case, at year 0, the air conditioner dies and they install a heat pump. The furnace still has life, so it's left there to provide backup heating. Then in 10 years, when the furnace dies, it's okay because they've installed a heat pump, and so the heat pump will just serve heating and cooling fully. And so that's the scenario essentially. I want to show you the table that shows the breakdown for the incremental cost for the air conditioner and heat pump scenarios under the zero NOx scenario. On the left is the AC furnace base case, and on the right is the heat pump measure. So you'll notice it'll show you the year and what is happening. So at each point when equipment needs to be replaced, we have a line for that, and then the cost. So on the first line, it's the AC fails and you install a new AC and keep the existing furnace, and so on. I also wanted to bring your attention to the bottom of the graph. So you'll notice the sum of the cost over 30 years, the air conditioner cost, AC furnace path is more expensive than the heat pump path. And so I think that's intuitive. And it's about a 700 cost difference. So 700 less for the heat pump scenario. And because of this negative incremental cost, some of the cost effectiveness in the milder climate zones actually flipped to become cost effective. So where they were not cost effective in our standard assumptions, under the zero NOx assumptions, they actually become cost effective. However, what might be surprising to see is that the overall magnitude of the 30-year on-bill cost effectiveness is lower in some cases. And so you see that here. So in the blue is the standard results, and the orange is the zero NOx scenario. So I don't know if that is surprising for some of you. It was surprising for me at first, and I was like, why is this the case? So but as I looked into it, it's because you only have 10 years of utility cost savings under the zero NOx scenario. So at year 10, when your furnace dies and you replace your furnace with a heat pump, now the base case and the upgrade case are both heat pumps. So your utility savings that you're in this scenario are only from the first 10 years when the base case is a AC furnace and your upgrade case is a heat pump. So I hope that makes sense. I can pause here if there are any questions. I know that I saw some things going on in the chat, but I know that we have some people monitoring that. So if there's no dying questions, I will continue.
Ada, there's no questions in the chat on this particular topic.
Okay.
We've answered the others.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, no, hold on. Just as I said that. Robert?
Go ahead.
And when we pause for questions, we welcome a raised hand, and for those persons to come off mute, turn on their camera, or interact with us if that is better. So, Robert, would you like us to read your question, or should you come off mute and read it for yourself? So it looks like he would like us to read it for him. He's asking, tell me the difference between standard and zero NOx.
Okay, yeah. So in the standard results, the base case is a air conditioner and furnace throughout the entire 30-year analysis period. In the zero NOx scenario, the base case is an air conditioner and furnace for the first 10 years. And then when the furnace needs to be replaced, it's past that 2030 mark. So it has to be replaced with a heat pump. So at year 10, it's a heat pump from, okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah, it's a heat pump throughout the rest of the analysis period. Sounds good. Any other questions? If not, I will continue. Oh. Where do you, I'm sorry, I don't have my chat up. Where do the equipment replacement estimates come from? Are you referring to the life?
I think the cost estimates.
Oh, cost estimates. Let me go back. These cost estimates, yes. So these come from primarily from tech data. I think there's, let me see if there's any Aaliyah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe these are tech data. There might be some more detailed pieces from our contractor costs, so things like fan motors and where the tech data didn't cover it, but majority of this is tech data.
Looks like we have a few hand raised. Ada,
Dylan?
shall I go ahead and call on Dylan? Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering on the life cycle estimates, were you able to incorporate like statewide incentives for heat pump installation or any like local or regional heat pump incentives?
No, we don't include incentives because I believe that the reason is because they change and depends on your circumstance. But yeah, so we don't have the incentives in there, and so it can provide a little bit more of a conservative result. And so you can definitely add in those, add in those incentives and see how that would play out.
Yeah, like for example, the South Coast Air Quality Management District has that Go Zero program that'll be subsidizing between $1,500 to $3,000 for heat pump installations, and so that could pretty dramatically shift the life cycle cost of the zero NOx scenario, I would assume.
Yeah. Thanks for that comment.
I have a question too.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. I'm just trying to be sure I understand these equipment costs. These in 2036, it says 14,529 would be the baseline, but then also the same number in 2041 for the future heat pump. Is that essentially the same assumption separated by 5 years, or is it, am I misunderstanding that? The same cost assumption, just not assuming any discount or escalation factor?
That is a good question.
And then I also
It
noticed
looks
in
like that.
2051, the baseline cost goes down for that heat pump failing and a new system being needed. So those costs, it made me wonder if maybe I don't understand the cost inputs to this equation.
Yeah. Aaliyah, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Oh yeah, go ahead. Take it.
Hi, everyone. This is Aaliyah German with Frontier Energy. Yes, you are right. First of all, we're assuming the same replacement is occurring in the base case at year 2036 as in the heat pump case in 2041. This isn't saying these costs presented are ignoring inflation, so it's not saying that inflation does not occur. These are just not accounting for, these are before inflation is added into the cost. But what it is assuming is it's assuming that there isn't, other than the inflation impact, there aren't other influences that are changing the cost based on the cost that we have today. So we are working with the cost estimates that we came up with from the tech data, and then using those to apply for future replacement costs.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Which then generates the follow-up question, which is from the customer's perspective, the on-bill perspective, is that methodological decision trust inspiring? does that give us confidence that in relative terms that we can anticipate contractor installation costs to remain at parity with cost of living, wages, whatever? Because my sense on that is maybe right now we are, with the tech data you're basing this on, using what might be considered to be a high baseline cost for equipment installation. But I have no data on which to base that, but it just feels anecdotally like that might be the situation we're in the state of California right now.
So if I understand correctly, you're asking about, is that an accurate assumption to assume that there aren't other market factors at play over the next 10, 20 years that might impact these costs, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And I think what you were in the same situation where you mentioned you don't have any data to point to that, and neither do we. It is very likely that there will be some changes to cost over time. We just don't know what those are going to look like, what magnitude, and in some cases which direction. And so the approach that we've taken is to utilize the data that we do have available to us and apply that for the future costs. But
understood. And thank you for that. I wanted to be sure I understood whatever kind of methodological or assumptions were driving this.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thoughtful question. Anyone else have a question? Yes. Go ahead. Naomi?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm curious if in Southern California it's less cost effective because with the higher heating load and lower cooling load, higher cooling load, lower heating load, it's actually not as energy efficient to use a heat pump, or is there a different reason it's less effective in Southern California?
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. There's lower heating load, and so when you switch over from a gas furnace to a heat pump, the energy savings that you would see in an area with high heating load, and you're offsetting that energy with a heat pump and you're getting that energy efficiency, you're just not able to achieve as much energy efficiency and energy savings when the heating load is lower. So yeah, I think you're right about that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
Okay. All right, if there's no other questions, I'm going to move on to just summarize some of the things that we've talked about. So first is that first year utility costs. So the resident may see an increase or decrease in their utility bill after installing a heat pump, depending on the relative cost of electricity to gas in your area, even though, as Maggie mentioned earlier, heat pumps are significantly more efficient than gas furnaces. That relative cost of electricity is often higher than natural gas in most areas in California. So heat pumps may result in an increase or decrease in utility costs in the first year. For on-bill cost effectiveness, this is the cost effectiveness from the resident's point of view. And the dual fuel heat pump with an existing furnace is on-bill cost effective based on the high gas escalation scenario in almost all climate zones, and cost effective based on the modest gas escalation in most climate zones. We also talked about LSC cost effectiveness. And again, this is the long-term cost of operating California's energy system. And although it's a little more removed from what the resident will experience, it is an acceptable metric to build a REACH code around, and it tends to look better based on cost effectiveness. So and in older homes, as we saw in that graph, all three measures are cost effective using LSC metric in all climate zones. And in the newer homes, they're cost effective in most cases. Also wanted to mention PV and battery. So while it was not evaluated in this report, it was evaluated in our previous 2022 single family retrofit cost effectiveness analysis, and it showed there are some synergies and benefits to combining a heat pump space heater with PV or with PV and battery, because the additional electricity usage from the heat pump can be offset by energy generated by PV. So if a home has PV that is producing a little excess, or if someone's considering installing PV in addition to their heat pump, this could be a good opportunity for reducing the utility bill and keeping the usage under the higher tiers of the electricity tariff. So there could be some good synergies there. For the CARE rate, so for those who aren't familiar, CARE is the alternative tariff for low-income households. And under the CARE tariff, it does result in improved cost effectiveness with lower electricity rates relative to gas. And for the high efficiency equipment, it does lower utility costs in all cases and improves cost effectiveness in many climate zones in the oldest vintage relative to the standard efficiency equipment. However, cost effectiveness is generally lower in newer homes where the energy savings is not able to offset the increase in incremental costs, about $3,000. So now that we've seen the cost effectiveness results for the heat pump space heater measure, we'll move into what could an AC ordinance look like? And Misty and the statewide team and the CEC have been working to develop the ordinance structure, requirements, and language. So I'm going to hand it off to Misty to talk through that.
Hey, thank you very much, Ada. Okay, so the study results basically showed us that there are some cost-effective paths to develop an ordinance here. And so what might an AC to heat pump ordinance look like? I'm going to add a caveat before I begin here, in that name is very misleading. It looks very simple. It's, the AC pathway, the AC to heat pump ordinance. However, as you start getting into some of the details here, we found that there really are a lot of nuances that need to be addressed with an ordinance like this. And so just wanted to kind of cover some of those first. First, it's for existing homes. And so that means that there are going to be some site-related challenges. Not at every home, certainly, maybe even not at a majority, but there will be some site-related challenges, and we have to acknowledge that. Second, there's a lot of different ways an AC replacement project might happen. Someone may just change out their air conditioner. They may change their air conditioner and leave the furnace, or change both the air conditioner and the furnace. They may also change the entire system, including the ductwork. So there's a lot of different permutations here. And lastly, the energy code requirements actually are different depending on which of those paths you select. And so there are a lot of nuances when you start getting into this. We found, as we were looking at the language and trying to track everything, we were having a little bit of trouble. And so we developed an image so that we could try to get a little bit better picture of the regulations. And so this is a very busy image, but I think it's actually helpful once you get used to looking at it. So just try to bear with me while I explain it, okay? So the proposed requirements that are shown here have actually been modified from the CalGreen language, the original language. Given the complexity of all the requirements here, I am not going to focus on that modification at all. We are just going to be looking at the difference between the state base code requirements and the changes that would be required from adopting an ordinance, okay? So looking at this here, I'm gonna just do a little, let's see if we can orient a little bit here. What is being shown here are two of those paths. There is the new heat pump only path, or the new heat pump and new ducts. For the state code, this would actually apply to air conditioners as well. But once we have an ordinance, the state code path will only apply to heat pumps. Okay, so there's the two paths, and then all of these boxes, if there's no shading in the box, that means it is equal to the state code requirement. So these are the state code requirements. If we adopt an ordinance, those state code requirements would apply to the heat pumps and no additional requirements. These would be the requirements for heat pumps. Okay. There's something to note here on the left-hand side. There are several references to this RA path. This is actually from the existing state code, and it is basically an acknowledgement of the challenges some site conditions might present. And it is a path that's in the state code for many of these measures that is available if you cannot achieve the requirement, if it's just physically infeasible to achieve the requirement. One of the classic examples there is the duct sealing requirement. For existing homes, the requirement is to seal them to 10% leakage level. If you aren't able to do that, and sometimes that's the case, there may be asbestos that's around the ducts or in the area keeping you from accessing the ducts. They may be inaccessible. They may be between floors or other reasons why you can't access them or other things. And so if you can't achieve 10%, there are documented processes to go through, and they're field verified to show that you did everything feasible to get there, even though you weren't able to actually hit the target. So that's what the RA path means. And you're going to see this mostly on the left-hand side. On the left-hand side, when you only replace your air conditioner and you leave the other equipment in place, that existing equipment is often going to need a little bit of help. It may not be able to reach these requirements. On the right-hand side, and hold off before you move that one, please, Ada. On the right-hand side, that is all new equipment. And so there's not really that alternative path option here. We only have it on the left where you have existing equipment left in place. Okay? So as I noted, all of these blue boxes are a reach over the state code. This box here with the gradient coloring means it's a reach in some climate zones, but not in others, okay? So it may or may not be a reach depending on where you're at. So if we look across here, we can see that there's really if you just replace your AC, there's no real requirements for the existing equipment that's left in place, which is the ducts, the duct sealing, the airflow, which is also a function of the air handler, as well as the fan efficacy. There is a requirement for some homes to meet this fan efficacy target, but we can. Oh, I'm sorry. sorry, Kate, I'll get there in just one sec, to meet that fan efficacy. But there's also an exception, and we think that this is only going to impact some homes because others are accepted because of the age of the equipment. It just simply can't get there. I see there's a question in the chat. What is a refrigerant charge, or what is ref charge? This is refrigerant charge verification. Sorry for the abbreviation there. And that just means that somebody, a HERS rater or an ESS rater, comes out and verifies that the system is charged properly. And then that goes, you get a field verification that your system's charged properly. So on the existing equipment side, basically what it comes down to is the biggest lift, the biggest requirement, if you choose to install an AC, is to improve the envelope also. And to do that, the two requirements that are here are to install attic insulation up to R49 and air sealing at the ceiling plane. And there is an exception here if you already have existing R38 attic insulation. Now I want to just kind of stop for 1 second and say that these are proposed requirements. Jurisdictions are within their own, it's their own purview to decide if they want to adjust these requirements in some way. There is no magic number that we've achieved here, but this is what we think is a good balance to encourage people to look to the heat pump. There's quite a bit of extra that needs to happen if you install an AC, but also to keep it feasible so that we stay within the EPCA requirements. We do want to have a feasible path. We also want to make sure that we don't create any enforcement difficulties. That was one of our concerns, is we don't want to add complication or create a situation for either the homeowner or the building department that is untenable for some reason because of those existing building challenges. Okay, so going back to this left-hand side. So if you replace only your air conditioner, pretty much what you're looking at is improving the envelope, getting a refrigerant charge, and then potentially also improving the distribution of the air, the efficiency there. Those requirements, as you can see, this envelope requirements are already required in the state code if you replace the entire system. And those are triggered by a new duct system. If you replace your ducts, you do already have to do those envelope improvements. Okay, so it pretty much brings this up to that level and goes just a little bit further. On the right-hand side, go ahead and hit the next for me. The requirements are a little bit different. Again, this is for an entirely new system with new ducts. You already have to improve the attic insulation levels and then seal the ceiling. So the improvements here are actually looking at the distribution system. We're looking at the duct system and improving that, improving the insulation levels up to R8, where it's not required by the state code over here, you can see there. Improving that fan efficacy. So that's the energy it takes to get the air to all the registers. And then also and getting a refrigerant charge verification if it's not required by the state code. So you can kind of take the requirements and look, if you take the one path, you have much more significant requirements to improve the envelope and a little bit to improve the system and the duct efficiency. If you already are changing out the duct system and the whole system, then the improvements are limited mostly to the distribution side because they're already required here for the envelope. Okay. Okay, does that make sense to folks, or are there any questions?
Misty, this is Tom. I was just curious, if you went to a ductless system, do you still have to do the building shell improvements?
In this case, I think on the left-hand side, you still would. No, there's no entirely new system on the right-hand side, so I don't think that they would be in. Please, anybody else correct me if if I'm wrong about this. Sometimes this section is a little bit weird, so I'm a little hesitant to answer without looking it up, to be honest with you. But I think if you were replacing your duct, if you were getting rid of your duct system, then it would not trigger these requirements.
All right, thank you.
And okay, I
I
see
have a
another
question from Meg. She's asking if we can explain the R19 exception in climate zones 1, 3, and 6.
Okay, and that is for the attic insulation. That is actually the state code requirement. We did not change that at all. And so all I can say is I believe that in those climate zones, it probably doesn't, it may not be cost effective to go up to R49 if you already have the R19. We have the luxury of not having to be cost effective here because our cost effective path is actually the heat pump path, not the air conditioner path. And so we will be requiring it. We are suggesting that you only allow an exception if you have existing R38 instead of the R19, and that's in all climate zones. This is one of those things that is up to the jurisdiction. I have, in developing this language, we've had feedback from one jurisdiction saying there should be no exception here, that even the R38 should not be accepted. I've had feedback from another jurisdiction that said that R38 is too high and we should be accepting them if it's R30. So these are those kinds of things that there's some levers to pull, but they're kind of small levers, but there are adjustments you can make that make sense to your jurisdiction. Meg, did you have another question?
Yeah, I guess I'm just, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm curious. So you have that exception for R38 in the new AC only path, but then in the new AC furnace plus new ducts path, you kept the R19 exception. Did you think about in that new AC and new ducts path having making that a little more stringent in the AC, the non-heat pump path by going up to that R38 exception at all?
We did talk about that and we kind of went back and forth on it. At this point, there's no exception for 13 climate zones and then a lower exception for 3. And so we were not quite sure if we added R38 for just those 3. We would have to do a little bit more modeling, I think, to find that ultimate point. And so because it seemed to be kind of balancing around that same, effectively, it kind of worked out to be close to the same thing. We decided to just leave it at the state code. So there would be hopefully fewer complexities with the state code. We were a little bit concerned that if we just changed it here and not over there, it gets a little bit tricky. It's a pretty tricky part of the code already.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. That helps me understand what you decided there. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. I can't say it's a good technical answer entirely. It's partially technical and partially trying to find some balance, really.
Yeah, and of course, what I'm looking at is sort of how challenging, the relative challenge and sort of incentive to go to heat pump compared to the AC path and between those two paths, and sort of understanding that balance point and what you all decided.
Right, and it doesn't seem that this is super challenging, although when you look at it, there's a lot of requirements here already. And so there isn't a huge reach. We kind of ran out of places to reach, in all honesty, without invoking yet another contractor or something like that. There's only so many HVAC measures to adjust. So it's a little bit tricky on that side where it's really pretty robust already. Okay, Bo?
Thanks, Misty. I want to point out something about the new heat pump only pathway on the far left that's not shown, and that would be that in our statewide team ordinance, it allows for a dual fuel heat pump, and that would still comply with what we're calling new heat pump only. And that's an option. That's what we have in our ordinance. And I would just point out that jurisdictions could instead, if they wanted to, mimic more what's already in the Cal Green language, which disallows dual fuel heat pumps for this pathway. Instead, it just allows you to keep your existing furnace and won't let you put in a new one with the heat pump. So that's just one difference between what we have here and Cal Green.
Yeah, there is some question about that language. I think there's a couple of different interpretations about that, and I think we've gone around a couple of things. It's not entirely clear, I think, and so yeah, that's an area, a bit of a gray area. So yeah, thank you for pointing that one out. There are a couple of gray areas. As I started with, there's so many nuances here. It really, it's a lot trickier than it looks on the surface. Kurt?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Bo, for that highlight. And a question back to you, Bo, and for the larger audience. The dual fuel heat pumps offer the user some ability for reliance on fuel type based on thresholds, or varies by manufacturer. There's no standard. Is there anything we can share just really quickly? Thank you.
You mean as far as being able to switch between the two?
Yes.
The requirements in the energy code, if you have a heat pump, it has to be the primary heating source. And it's set to make the gas furnace a supplemental heating source below 35 degrees Fahrenheit only.
So in a sense, potentially, if you were to compare it with a hybrid heat pump, the hybrid will switch to a resistance mode when the efficacy of harvesting heat from the ambient environment is reduced to such a point that it's not working. So maybe it's like the fuel that's used in the case of a non-electric fuel might be in a similar circumstance, or no?
I would just add that the temperature cutoff and the fact that that the furnace has to be backup is great, because it's going to help to limit the use of the furnace. But at the same time, with cold climate heat pumps, you can get ones that have the electric resistance as the backup, and you're still able to take care of times that where it might be really cold outside and you need that extra backup. So just pointing out that there are all electric options that also have backup. Of course, it's not two different fuels, but still you can get backup from all electric.
And I'll add one thing to that. This is Aaliyah, the cutoff temperature, that 35 degrees, and this is in the upcoming code that goes into effect next January. That applies regardless of fuel. So that would be electric resistance backup or gas backup.
Oh, thank you. So that makes, now it's very sensible. Okay, thank you. Didn't want to distract too much, Misty. Thanks for the.
Hey, Julia. She got it right. Thanks. All righty. Any other questions before I hand this back to Ada? All righty. Ada?
Thank you, Misty. So lastly, to just have one more slide. So I just wanted to present some AC path estimated costs. So while you're not required to prove cost effectiveness for the AC path, we've heard it would be helpful to understand what the cost would look like for the AC path. So these are estimates we've received from contractors and the tech data just to give a sense of the cost. Wanted to point out that in this top table for the new AC only path, the 0.45 watts per CFM fan efficacy, we honestly struggled to find the cost for this. We've been talking to contractors, and there's site-specific variances and other challenges. So, but in addition, like Misty mentioned, there's also that exception for furnaces built before 2019 actually are not required to meet this 0.45 watts per CFM fan efficacy. It just needs to meet 0.58. So we think that the majority of use cases are going to fall into that exception. And so we felt it was fair to not include the cost of getting to 0.45 because it probably won't be required in most cases. So these are our best estimates for costs. They are estimates. And if we get more updated data, we'll definitely keep you all posted. But these are just to give you a sense of where it might fall and give you a sense of the cost. And just wanted to also note that the costs shown here are just the measures required by the REACH code, not the state code. So they were the blue boxes in Misty's image, not the white ones. All right, so that is all that I have. If there aren't any questions, I will hand it back to Misty.
Okie doke. Thank you, Ada. All righty. Okay, so we talked about all the different possibilities here. Usually at this point, I would say, oh, there's all, we would talk about the results and all the different options for how you might set up a REACH code. And at this point, we really just have the one measure. And so it turns out there's not a lot of options. As I noted, there are some small levers to pull. There are exceptions that you can look at and different pieces of the requirements. But really, the model language is what it is, and it is available. I think that I messed up with no, I do have my link. Excellent. So, gosh, I'm sorry. This is blanked out for a second there. Sorry about that. So Kelly noted that we put together language for CalGreen for the model ordinance with a working group, and that we were focusing on implementation. Of course, you can adjust that language as you deem appropriate. But as part of that working group process, the LADWP folks actually pointed out something that we actually had missed, all of us. And that is that the language would actually fit better and be less complex if it were in Part 6 directly rather than in Part 11. As we were looking at it, we realized that they actually were right, and it does fit better in Part 6. So we are redoing that language so that it will directly amend Part 6. We're working on that now, but what I want to say is that the requirements do not change. They won't change. The language that's posted is our proposed requirements. We will simply be revising the language so that it fits in Part 6. A couple of reasons for that. It actually makes it cleaner. There's less language because a lot of the language is already in the code. And also, as I noted earlier, that particular section of the code has a lot of different references and cross-references and things. And so one of the points that was made is that putting it in Part 11 would add even more of those references back and forth. And so it eliminates all of that. So we're working on that now and hope to have that published in the next couple weeks. And that we do have existing language, though, I did want to say, that modifies the Part 11, and that is our proposed requirements. So those are available on the LEC site at the link I just dropped, if you'd like to download that language in the meantime. We'd also, if you could go to the next slide, please, Ada. We also wanted to let you know of a couple of other events that are coming up, as well as some resources that are available. First, we have our companion webinar. It's the non-residential alterations that is basically focused on HVAC replacement. That webinar will be coming up on June 24th at 11 a.m. We have not sent out the invitations yet. We're just about to do that. So please keep an eye out for an invitation soon. And then also wanted to let you know that PCE, SVCE, and TRC, a lot of initials there, are hosting an existing buildings reach codes working group session on June 12th. And that session is at 10:30. I believe it's a 2-hour session, 10:30 to 12:30. I've got the links for both of those, and actually I've got the link for that one here that I will drop in the chat in just a moment. And as far as resources, I already let you know about the AC to heat pump model ordinance language. We also have been updating our FlexPath language, and we wanted to thank, again, a lot of initials coming up, SVCE, PCE, and TRC for their collaboration in updating those FlexPath resources. They have been a key partner for us. They have been working with them as well, and so we're really, really grateful for their assistance in getting those resources available. We have actually got published model language for the FlexPath, if you're interested in that, and are about to publish some additional resources, including a decision guide, a staff report, and a presentation that you can use to, you can adjust. Basically, you could just basically use them as a starting point and make it your own. In addition to that, the Cost Effectiveness Explorer is set up to make developing a FlexPath ordinance really, really easy. And so we hope that you will take a look at those. Here is the link for all of the FlexPath resources. And I apologize. I seem to have dropped the other link. I'm sorry. Hold on. Just give me 1 second. Apologies. I am the worst at linking. Alrighty, and here is the link to the SVCE event. Okay. That pretty much wraps it up for us today. I want to thank everybody. Oh, wait, I do see a hand up. Meg, you had a question before we wrap up?
Yeah, sorry. I was wondering if you could go back to that AC path estimated costs slide. I'm just trying to better understand, like, are these incremental costs compared to code requirements, so I think I'm specifically looking at that new R8 duct and the furnace cost. Is that just the cost of insulating ducts to R8, or is that including the cost of the duct as well? And is that from R0 to R8, or is it sort of a climate zone dependent average incremental cost? And similarly for the furnace, that's just the installed cost of a new furnace, but not taking into account sort of any differential cost from going from an AC to heat pump, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's not an incremental cost. This is just the approximate cost of installing that furnace or of installing the R8 ducts, completely new.
Does it include the cost of installing? Or okay, yeah, I see. Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
Any other questions? Is it Peng Bin? Is that correct?
Yeah. So the table 20 indicated the new AC, but it seems like there's no cost estimate for the new AC. Is that right?
Yeah, so now both of these would assume a new AC. But yeah, these are just we try to capture the other costs that would be triggered. So we're assuming that you're already planning to install an AC. So you're right, the cost of the AC is not included here.
All right, thank you.
You do have those costs in the overall report, though.
Yeah.
So
and also I did not see the chat. I know a lot of information has been shared in the chat. So how can I get those information?
We can add it to the PDF when we send out the slides.
Okay,
we'll add the chat links and everything.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And just to let you know that all of the equipment costs are included in the report. We are wrapping up the report now and hope to have that available in the next couple of weeks. Alrighty. Any other questions? Okay. I will get out the proper link. I apologize if that link doesn't work. I just see the message that somebody is having difficulties with the last link there. Is anybody, Farhad, are you on the line here? Do you have the link, the proper link for that? I apologize. I thought I had it, but apparently I don't have the right link.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can grab it.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions while we are getting that link? All righty. Well, as always, we really appreciate you making the time to attend the webinar. And I'd like to say thank you to all of the presenters today, to Kelly, Maggie, and to Ada, and all of you. And we're really looking forward to working with you on this and hoping that all turns out positively and we are able to move forward and see if we can advance this cause a little bit further. All righty. Thank you.